Goodbye, my lover. Goodbye, my friend.
You have been the one. You have been the one for me. Touch my heart, touch my
Chill. Hello there, gang, and welcome to another episode of Displaying Model Behaviour, the Earth's mightiest action figure video podcast. So take off your pants, crack a beer, and let's talk toys. Let's talk about the toys that will sadly no longer be in my collection. Moving forward, I'm scaling down, I'm curating. This is like an action figure museum, you know, you can't have everything. You gotta just have the rare choice cuts, and that's what I'm doing. And that means a lot of these figures, they gets to go. These figures gets to go. That doesn't mean that I don't love them. It doesn't mean that they're not great figures. But it just means that I do not have the space to contain all of these beautiful little plastic masterpieces. So I gotta send them on to a new home. So just for your interest and a fun little exercise, I'm going to go through all the figures that I'm going to be selling and why I think I can part ways with them. And if you want to pick up some of these, because I know that was going to be the next question. Box clever, always one step ahead and two behind. You can go over to the Model Behaviour Facebook group. That's where I'm going to be selling these items. And I'll say right now, I will ship internationally. However, you're probably better off just buying them from whatever country you're in, because my goodness, international shipping costs are ludicrous. But if you want to pick up some of these figures, that's the place to find them. So folks, enough with the preamble, let's get to it. Which of these action figures have got to go? Alright, we're going to kick things off with a figure that is already going to be a real heartbreaker. It is Cowboy Logan, but how many Wolverines does one person need? About 1,000 according to Marvel Legends and Hasbro. But I stand by the fact that if you've got Tiger Stripe and maybe Brown and Tan, then you've probably got your maximum number of Wolverines, at least for my collection. And with this figure, really it's the fact that he's wearing black leather dress shoes with jeans. I just can't get over that, so sorry. Now, speaking of Wolverine, we've got Lady Deathstrike, and this is a very modern figure, only came out a few months ago, and she's nice, but I'm not going for a big-time X-Men villains collection. Really, for X-Men, I can limit it to the Jim Lee essentials, that being kind of the cartoon cast and some of the other characters that orbit around that. So Deathstrike is a lovely figure and an important character, but when I'm being brutal, well, I'm being really brutal. Now, it might seem like I'm picking on Wolverine, but honestly I'm not, and I think you can agree with me on this one, that first appearance Wolverine, yeah, he's a nice enough figure, but unless you're doing a Wolverine timeline sort of display, then he's kind of surplus to requirements, because where are you going to put him? There's nowhere besides next to the Hulk that he really fits. Maybe with Department H and Alpha Flight, but I'm not going that broad with my X-Men teams, so he's kind of homeless right now. Now I gotta admit, this one feels like a betrayal almost, because it's Grey Gargoyle, a D-list bonkers, silly, wacky supervillain, and he's such a boy. I feel bad for letting him go, but still, he's not exactly A-list, and even though he's fun and quirky and goofy, I don't really need him on my shelf, because how many iconic storylines have involved Grey Gargoyle? Not that many that spring to my mind at least, so he's going in the pile. Speaking of which, with Grey Gargoyle also comes Whirlwind. Maybe he's slightly above Grey Gargoyle in the pecking order, but this is still kind of your Legion of Losers sort of characters. And even though Whirlwind is kind of fun with his gladiator juggernaut sort of helmet and his cyber goth bondage looking gear, it's so wacky, but at the same time I just don't really have a home for him, but hopefully someone will. Now then, Thanos. Okay, not Marvel Legends actually. I've thrown in a select here because you're gonna find this as I go through. I've got the Mezco Thanos, and a lot of people, they don't like the Mezco Thanos, but quite frankly, they're not welcome on Mezco Thanos Island, where the drinks are always free, like Club Tropicana. It's a good place to be, and if you don't like it, then, well, you're not invited. So I do have to get rid of my other Thanoses. Thanosi? Thanos. Either way, he's out. Maverick now. And Maverick, I was on the fence because he is very much a Jim Lee X-Men type character. He's right up there with Wolverine, Sabretooth, Omega Red. Actually, the more I'm talking about it, the more I'm thinking, well, maybe I should keep him. But then again, no, I can say no because I have my Jim Lee X-Men collection and he doesn't really fit with that team because he's always been an outsider, an extra character. So I feel that where space is so limited and I've really got to be brutal, unfortunately, even though I like the figure, Maverick doesn't make the cut. Now then, here's one that I never really needed, but honestly, she did kind of win a little place in my heart, and that is Gwenom. Of course, I love the crazy design with the symbiote, with the mouth and the teeth kind of coming over like a hoodie. I think that's such a clever way of doing the design, and then having the wonderful tongue that just lashes out like a scarf, sort of shawl that can wrap all around her body. It's a really, really fun design. It's just a character that I don't need. Now, this is tough because Morbius, that is classic Spider-Man. That's classic six-armed Spider-Man. And hey, Morbius might be quite big next year, or this year, or 10 years, whenever that movie comes out. But I've got the 90s Morbius, and even though this is the much more classic look, I'm a 90s kid, and I don't need two Morbiuses on my shelf, so therefore this more original, classic-looking one, I'm gonna have to find a new home for him, I think. Now we got Spider-Woman, Julia Carpenter, or Jessica Drew. I'm gonna go with Julia Carpenter. I'm pretty sure now, actually, and that's kind of locked in. Maybe that's why I'm selling her, because the name was always just befuddling to me, because I just have a brain that can't distinguish between two different people. I know, so impossible. But the figure is okay, she's nice enough, but when you're really trying to be brutal, nice enough just isn't good enough, unfortunately. So she looks cool, the original black costume Spider-Person, but still, I can't justify keeping her. And as far as justification goes, that's where Black Knight fits as well. When it comes to Avengers roster members, I'm trying to really pare that down because Avengers, you could have an entire huge collection just of Avengers characters. And when I started falling down that rabbit hole, I had to pull myself back, especially with White Vision coming out and the West Coast Avengers being built up. I was like, wait, I've never actually read West Coast Avengers. I don't need all the surplus members of the team. And unfortunately, that is what he is. Maestro. Oh boy, Maestro. The character that we kind of had to decorate ourselves, as you can see on the one on the left. I kind of threw all of the decorations on him because Hasbro were like, nah, we're gonna go for a minimum effort figure on this one. Just swapping out the head and putting on a tiny bit of jewelry. Nah, not good enough for me. I'm gonna have one Hulk in my collection and it's the most classic version of the Hulk. Maestro's a cool character, and hopefully in a few years, we'll get a cooler version of him. But in the meantime, this one, I don't think so. Now, Toy Biz. This is interesting, actually. The big, chunky Thunderbolts tank version of the Beetle. I really like this, and I couldn't believe that I managed to find one that's nearly complete. The only thing he's missing are his missiles, which actually I think make the figure look a bit tacky, so actually I don't mind not having them. But normally it's really hard to get him with all of his wings on the back there, so I was really pleased about that. But again, it's a very supplementary kind of character, and one that you don't necessarily need to have on your shelves, especially since he's so big. Now, Oreo Spider-Man, or Negative Zone Spider-Man. This is a fun figure. He's kind of cute and interesting, this stark black and white kind of contrast with Spidey, but really, honestly, if we're being legit, if we're being kind of brutal, do I need a black and white version of the Pizza Spider-Man, especially with the big black dots in his elbows and legs? Nah, he's a quirky figure, but certainly kind of like Webman. It's fun to have, but we don't need him. But Old Man Logan, I'll tell you what, is one of the prettiest Marvel Legends to have come out over the last couple of years. I think the sculpting and designing of the huge big duster jacket that he's wearing, I think that's so nice. And then the great face sculpts looking weathered and haggard. It's a really pretty figure. But again, my collection is more sort of 90s focused, so I don't need Old Man Logan, but that's a tough one to say goodbye to. Another Thanos. Again, surplus to requirements now. I think this is the Walgreens one. I'm pretty sure it's not the Build-A-Figure. So yes, it must be Walgreens then, I suppose. Now this guy is super loosey-goosey. He will shake, rattle and roll in your hand. So it's going to be difficult to find a home for him maybe, because he's just... he doesn't hold up very well, especially compared to the Deluxe Marvel Legends Thanos, which is beautiful, but still, the shiny blue chrome, that's very, very striking. Wendigo, again going back to the expanded X-Men collection, just like first appearance Wolverine, I simply don't have a home for him. And this is a more modern version of the character of Wendigo. I think he appeared in the most recent X-Men comics. Well, I say most recent, probably a couple of years ago now, with that sort of more vicious looking head sculpt. Really cool bath. I mean, the sculpting, I love the stark white colors and the mean looking face, but I just don't really have a specific use for him. That's the difficulty and the problem. So even though he's great, he gotta go. Now this one does kill me. Living laser, just like Grey Gargoyle, and I'm actually with Grey Gargoyle and Whirlwind, they make the Lethal Legion. Geez, maybe I should keep those guys actually, because Spidey did battle the Lethal Legion not that long ago. But again, I need to save space. I need just a couple of Detolfs of really nice figures. This guy's great, but he's not that iconic for me, so I think I'll be able to part with him. Centurion Iron Man. You know my biggest problem with this guy? Too much red plastic. I feel like some figures, you can have a whole swath of color and it looks okay, but this guy, the red plastic, looks exactly like that. It doesn't look like metal. It doesn't look like chrome, and it sure as heck doesn't look like iron. It looks like red plastic man. So even though it's a fun, interesting design of Iron Man from the 80s and from the Armor Wars story, I wouldn't want to keep him. Oh, it's the Juggernaut! This one, I was really torn which Juggernaut to keep. And some of y'all might call it sacrilege, but I'm actually sticking with Select Juggernaut. Of all the Juggernauts to keep hold of, you got the Colossus 2-pack and this Build-A-Figure. I just love the Select with the big, huge, gigantic chunkiness. That's my Juggernaut. I think this guy's head and face sculpt are fantastic, but still, I only need one Juggernaut in the collection, so it's going to be Select. Now, this one is real tough. The Grey Hulk. I mean, he's actually one of my, if not my actual favorite Hulk, but he's also, when you've got the Green Hulk, you don't necessarily need the Grey Hulk unless you have a Hulk collection. If that is your thing, then have all the Hulks. But when I gotta be brutal, I gotta say I only need one. And if you've got the 80th anniversary Jade Giant who came with first appearance Wolverine, then dang it, I don't need first appearance Hulk, even though, boy, I do love him. Nimrod. Nimrod, not so difficult to let go of because I'm not the oldest old school X-Men fan, and this is a character that is just a big block. Basically, you can't really pose him all that dynamically. He looks big and impressive on the shelf, but I don't really have any kind of emotional attachment to Nimrod. And then the fact that he's just taking up so much space that I think, you know what? I don't think I can really justify keeping that much real estate for that one character. Hologram Iron Man, there you go, or AI Iron Man, whichever one you call him what you will, but call him surplus to requirement. I have no problem getting rid of this luminous paperweight. And even though he does look pretty when you hold him up to the light and the sun shines through the translucentness, oh my goodness, that does look pretty, but I mean, come on. Do you really need him in the collection? I mean, maybe you do, and if you do, fair play, but me, nah, not so much. And oh, this is gonna get the most panties ruffled. I know. Deluxe Thanos is a fantastic Marvel legend. I'm saying it. You don't gotta convince me. I know this guy is so perfect. It's full-on Infinity Wars Thanos, but I only need one Thanos. There can be only one. And even though he is gorgeous, I just don't need him. So someone else, I'm sure, will snap him up and give him a good home because he is fantastic. And someone who's a little bit less essential is the AIM Scientist Supreme. I will admit, he's actually more of a fun, quirky figure than I was expecting. I thought, oh geez, I'm really just gonna have to buy this guy just to do the review and get the Build-A-Figure piece, and that's pretty much it. But actually, once I put him next to MODOK, he and MODOK next to each other, side by side, they make a really fun double act. I think he complements MODOK so well, but ultimately, he's expendable. Jocasta, the Bride of Ultron. She's kind of she's an interesting kind of figure, but I've never read a single appearance with her. I know she teams up or pairs up with Machine Man. I've got Machine Man as well. There are other ones I'm going to be selling, but I wanted to break this down so it's not too much of a mammoth video. I know she has a lot of fans too. She is kind of an important member of the Avengers, the Bride of Ultron that kind of gained her own sentience and became a force for good. That's a cool character, but I don't have the connection, so I don't need her on the shelf. Venom Pool. This is another one that it's tough to let go of, because as far as Build-A-Figures go, boy howdy, this guy's cool. Like, he is a really cool figure. But again, I don't need him. I've never played Contest of Champions before. I've never seen any appearances with him. Yes, he looks great, but he just doesn't fit anywhere. So that's one that it is tough. It's a tough decision to make, but ultimately he takes up all that room, and I don't just want him sitting in a box. I want someone to love him, and hopefully someone will. Arcade now, that's another one kind of like Deathstrike. Were they both from the same wave? I think they were. He's a nice looking figure, but I don't know my Arcades. I don't know the stories that he's been in. Apparently, like, you know, when I was told he's predominantly an X-Men villain, I was like, oh, is he? Oh, okay. You know, which shows that I really can't justify real estate for Arcade, even though with the two different heads, the wonderful bow tie, the big shoes, he's a fun character with a lot of effort that's gone into him. I just don't need him. And Silver Samurai. This one I actually think is a real hidden gem as far as Marvel Legends go. I'm a big fan of this guy, although I guess they must have made surplus amounts of him because you can pick him up really cheap. And it's another one of those figures where I don't have a home for him. It's like in my X-Men display, I've got Magneto there and like they're all sort of fighting, and that makes sense, but the Silver Samurai, it's such a personal story between him and Wolverine that unless you just have the two of them posed together, there's not a display that I feel really kind of makes sense, so nah, I don't mind parting with him. And a little old Ant-Man, I've gone real brutal with my Avengers collection. I was like, no, even the super core Avengers, even those guys, they ain't safe. So Ant-Man, even though he was a founding member, I figure, you know what, I don't need a proper Avengers team. Just having Cap, Thor, Iron Man, and Hulk. That's the essential bunch of Avengers. So the extra ones, no, I don't mind saying goodbye to, the Wasp included. Now Cap, literally, the Now Cap. This is actually, I think, one of the best versions of Captain America's costume. I love the way that they've gone classic, but a modern version of the classic, a more real-world militaristic sort of look as to how he would be putting his costume together. But I feel the figure, it really shows its age now. It's one that came out a long time ago, and we're having so many more new Caps that he isn't really needed. Now, the two Skullbusters, or Reese and Skullbuster, the Reavers, that's what I was trying to say. I love the details that go into these guys, the helmets, the mask, the jackets, really cool. And again, if I'm keeping Deathstrike, they all pair up together beautifully, especially with Bonebreaker coming out too. But then, if I get Bonebreaker, and I got these guys and Deathstrike, I've suddenly got a whole Reavers display, and I barely even know who the Reavers are. I can't justify that. They gotta go. And Wendigo. Wendigo, what am I saying? Xemnu, excuse me. I just embarrassed myself there. Xemnu, he's one of those characters that, it's kind of fun, but I don't know how many people were clamoring for a bath of the first ever Hulk. Now, he's fine, but as far as Build-A-Figures go, even though he's big, doesn't have any changeable hands, no changeable head, it was kind of basic, and again, I just don't really need that character in my collection. Now Loki. This is tough to let go of because Loki is so important, but since he's so important, where is our big, impressive, deluxe version of Loki? That's what we need, not this guy with painted on fish scale chainmail. I mean, that is lazy. That kind of grinds my gears just talking about it. This is such a big, important character, especially with everything that's been done with the character in the MCU. And this is the best we get? Get out of here. Elektra now. This is also tough because she is such a staple character. But I just feel like there's a better Elektra out there somewhere in the future. She hasn't been made yet, but I feel like she will be. Because when I look at this one, even though a lot of people say this is one of the best kind of female figures that they've done, I'm just not feeling it so much. I feel like there is a better version of Elektra that if I just hold out, I'm not going to miss her on the shelf. So I think someone else who's really into the street crime type characters, they'll love her. But anyway, I'm overlapping myself now with Genisvel. I've really pared back the Cosmic Collection. I mean, let's face it, when Galactus arrives, that's all the Cosmic you need, quite frankly. You got Galactus, you got Thanos, the Cosmic side of things is covered with the Fantastic Four as well. Genisvel is, yeah, he's a fun character. I like what they did with the whole star system on him. It looks really cool. But at the same time, he's got nowhere to go. He's kind of homeless, so he's out. Now, a deluxe Black Widow. This is really lovely, and this is a little bit tough to part with, but even though she's really cool with all the different accessories, the flight pack and stuff, I have never read any appearances of Black Widow looking like this. I don't really have any attachment to her, and that's where you really start to part with a lot of figures, when you can draw the line of going, hey look, you might be a cool figure, but I just don't need you. I ain't got that attachment. So because of that, the badass looking Black Widow, not for me anymore. And God Doom, well, that's one who is definitely exclusive to one storyline. And don't get me wrong, it's an awesome storyline. The modern Secret Wars, really cool. It's pretty much Game of Thrones with Marvel superheroes. It's a badass story. And yes, that is Thanos' skull that he's holding, having ripped it out of his body. That's a baller move right there. But as far as Doom goes, I've got my retro Doom, and until Mezco release their one, that's all the Doom I need. And that does it for the action figures that I will soon be saying goodbye to. Like I said before, if you want to buy some of them, you can go over to the Facebook group link in the description below. But guys, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you see here and you want to see more, then join the 6-1 clicks by clicking the like, share and subscribe buttons. And if you want to go one step beyond in supporting the channel, then you can do by going over to patreon.com/displaying model behavior. Throw a few shekels my way and you can watch all the exclusive videos, including the action figure reviews. There's a new review of Bastion up there, and a huge big unboxing video where I kind of flip out and go speechless over some presents that I got given. Absolutely blew my mind. It's a fun time to watch. And also, if you want to pick up a Displaying Model Behavior t-shirt, then you can do over at teespring.com. Check the link in the description below. And if you do get one, send me a photo, because I always mark out to see folks wearing the merchandise. So guys, thanks very much for watching, and until next time, keep displaying model behavior.
Cup of coffee. Big time.